ABSA is formally launching the opening of its non-banking subsidiary in the Republic of China today. It announced earlier in the year that it was venturing into China to help facilitate business between the second largest economy in the world and South Africa and the rest of the continent. So what's the ultimate goal of this corporate move? What possible opportunities can come from it? Well, I'm joined by Anand Naidoo. He's a managing executive for client coverage at ABSA. Very good afternoon, Anand. Thank you very much for joining us. I understand that you are in Beijing. South Africa and China have had a so-called strategic partnership for many years now, while China has had intensive economic relations with other African countries as well. So why is it only now that ABSA is employing the strategy of being in China this year?
Well, good afternoon, Nompu. Look, it's all a matter of timing. Since the separation from Barclays, there were a few things we had to do in a step-by-step fashion. The first one was establish our office in the UK that covered our European operations. Next was open an office in the US, in New York. And the third step now is China, given the largest trading partner in Africa for the last 14 years. So it wasn't a difficult decision, but we had to just get the timing right.
Yeah. So Anand, you described the office that you've set up as a non-banking office. So what will be the key elements of its work?
So essentially, yes, it's a non-banking subsidiary of ABSA Bank, which essentially entails providing advisory services for Chinese corporates and Chinese state-owned enterprises that are operating in Africa or looking to do business in Africa. So essentially connecting them to the various countries and opportunities that we have on the continent.
Yeah. So you obviously did your due diligence, your homework around servicing Chinese clients in China to venture into African markets. Where do you see their appetite when it comes to investing on the African continent, including South Africa?
Well, Nompu, it's across all parts of Africa. In fact, we've seen Chinese corporates embark on a variety of sectors as well. So traditionally, you've seen them quite active in the resources and mining space, but these days they are extremely active in telecommunications, in renewable energy. We see a huge influx of Chinese auto producers now. If you look at the South African streets these days, you've got the likes of BAIC, Val, Chery, BYD, and electric vehicles. China is producing 60% of the world's electric vehicles as well. So we expect that to roll out at quite a pace into Africa. So it's not any particular country or region, it's across all of Africa.
Yeah. So while ABSA is largely looking at assisting Chinese business to invest in Africa, do you see any opportunities the other way round, that is South African business or the rest of African business being able to invest in China and you facilitating that?
Yes, there's been quite significant trade flows. If you look at the trade between South Africa and China, 25 years ago, it was around $1 billion US. Over the last year, it's ramped up to a whopping $56 billion. So lots of trade both ways between China and South Africa, and a lot of commodities, including finished commodities, heading towards China and not in a one-way fashion. We see agriculture that's ramped up quite materially. So it's quite nice when you walk into a Chinese supermarket and you see South African avocados, for example, and various other citrus products that are in the stores here in Beijing.
So one last question around, we know that the African continent already has good relations with China, as does South Africa. It's our major trading partner, as you mentioned. What are your expectations as ABSA around the economic relations between China and the rest of the African continent, as well as South Africa, going forward? And presumably you have a good impression, given the fact that you've decided to make this move.
No, I think, for example, in a few months' time, you're going to have the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, which will be around, August, September this year. They've elevated it to a state level. So the president of China will personally be involved in that kind of interaction, where a number of heads of state from all over Africa will descend here in Beijing, to have that particular interaction. So we expect the momentum to increase even further. Our role as ABSA, being a Pan-African preeminent African bank, is really to connect the parties from China to Africa and Africa into China, as well. So we think we are a thought leader in terms of Africa risk and Africa opportunities as well. So huge opportunity for us, and we're really looking forward to ramping our interaction here in China.
Anand Naidoo, thank you very much, sir, for speaking to us. He's the Managing Executive for Client Coverage at ABSA.